Brazil has become the latest country to succumb to the far right. Newly elected Jair Bolsonaro is a fascist with a substantial history of hateful, repulsive, bigoted, and outright genocidal views. A man willing and able to execute his plans regardless of the human and planetary consequence they incur. Now, I actually have a list of things on my screen here, which I'm going to read off. I mean, obviously, I could just go over it off the top of my head because it's pretty horrific stuff. Um, but so I can get most of it, I've got it written down here. Um, so LGBTQ rights is a major thing that's under threat under the Bolsonaro administration. So the man is an open and admitted homophobe. He openly hates gay people. He's literally said that he would whack them in the streets if he saw them, holding hands and stuff. Um, and that if his son came home with another man, he would be viewing that as a sign of bad raising. Um, and like all people on the far right, his deeply homophobic views are rooted in this idea that society needs to be a heteronormative standard, a model of society. It needs to be men and women and nothing else, being together in a patriarchal union. And subsequently, LGBTQ people challenge this narrative. Therefore, they need to be, exterminated. And subsequently, Bolsonaro is, aligning himself with this view to match this, going along the fundamentalist, far right idea that these people are, somehow bad for just existing. Subsequently, Bolsonaro supporters have regularly targeted LGBTQ people with violence and, attacked them, killed them. And subsequently, his regime is going to be a reversal of any progress that has been made. Trans people, gay people, anyone that isn't heteronormative, cis heteronormative, they're going to be targeted. And that's just one of many things that I've got listed down here. Racism is the next one. Bolsonaro is a white supremacist that sees interracial marriage as a problem. He said that if his sons came home or dated black women, then he would see that as bad parenting. But he's quick to add that they didn't, so he saw that as good parenting. He regularly describes black people in negative ways. He said that the communities of freed slaves were good for nothing, and couldn't even procreate properly, which is a massive dog whistle for eugenics and the idea that black people are an inferior race. And subsequently, Nazis and the far right are, they see him as their, in the same way that Trump is their man, Bolsonaro is their man. The hatred that the people of color in Brazil are going to face is going to be colossal because of a regime, a dictatorship, to be. That's going to be arising. On the topic of dictatorship, the man, regularly called for, support for a civil war, a massacre of people to reinstall the military dictatorship that Brazil once had, not so long ago. He talks about voting as a pointless tool. He, regularly criticizes democracy for being democracy, for being democratic. He sees it as poor. He views dictatorship as the ideal way to run a country. That's literally fascism 101, the idea that, control should be for the powerful. Next, we have sexism. He's a very firmly fundamentalist, Christian person, someone who has decided that patriarchy is the way to go, the idea that women are inferior. In fact, he regards his sole daughter as a moment of weakness. He has 4 sons, and then his 5th child was a girl, and subsequently she's a moment of weakness because she's not a man, she's not regarded in the same way. According to Bolsonaro, this contributes to his and the far right's view of patriarchy, of the idea that women should have a fixed role in the household, of raising the children, of being subservient to their partners. The idea that this fuels the man's power, and the woman is an asset of the man. And another horrific thing he said was he wouldn't even rape someone. He wouldn't even rape you to a a female politician that was one of his opponents. A clearly outrageous thing to say, but a sign that he views women with contempt unless they are, subservient to him. The fact he's so casual with his talk of rape, the fact he opposes abortion, the fact he, sees women's rights as a joke, shows how far right he is, shows the latent sexism in his language. Next, we move on to human rights. The things above, things I've already mentioned, should tell you how disgusting a man this is. But already we've seen some of the things he's said. He regularly sees police brutality and prison, atrocities as a good thing. He thinks that criminals deserve to suffer in prison. And never mind that the people he sees as criminals are, gay people, black people, workers that strike, anyone who disobeys his ideas or societal norms. These are the people that he wants to suffer. But it's quite clear that he views these people as less than human. He speaks in favor of torture, something that's against the human rights of any person, regardless of who they are. And yet this man wants us to revert back to archaic medieval standards with talk of torture. That's disgusting. That's anti-human. Yet this man wants to do this. Never mind that the increase in police brutality and police cracking down on minorities and the marginalized and workers is gonna funnel and overpopulate the prisons, which is what they want. They want an excess of labor in prison for exploitation, for greater profits, which I'll come to at the end. Not only this, but he wants to erase the rights and protections of the indigenous population, the people living in the rainforest who have done for centuries, on their land. He wants to scrap them. He wants to be able to open their lands up to drilling, mining, deforestation, logging, all these things which would essentially erase the indigenous populations and force them to conform to the white supremacist, patriarchal system that Bolsonaro wants to enact. It's an encroachment on their human rights, but he does not care. He doesn't care because he is a fascist and he does not see the value in things around him. Similarly, on the topic of environment, this is another major, massive dent in the well-being of everyone on the planet. Bolsonaro wants to open up the Amazon to further deforestation, logging, corporate enrichment, as I've already mentioned. And this is with the aim to maximize profits and to essentially make him and his wealthy associates and friends wealthier, as per the system. And this is going to have a catastrophic effect on the planet's well-being. The Amazon is one of the world's most important ecosystems. It contains many of our most important plants and wildlife. And this fascist wants to erase it all. He wants to tear it down in favor of more money, essentially, more profits, more capital. And not only is this a threat to everyone on the planet, but it shows a sign of the contempt this man and fascism at large has for the well-being of the planet, of the well-being of everyone who lives here, of everything on the globe, because we're willing to just ditch it all in favor of corporate money, corporate profit. He also wants to pull out of the Paris Agreement, and considers climate change a myth. So it should pretty much highlight you to the fact that this man does not care for the environment. He only cares for capital, for his fascist agenda. Next, we have refugees, who he regarded as the scum of the earth. Tying into the racism, it's quite clear that Bolsonaro only, he has a white supremacist vision. He clearly cares only for his own vision, his own race, the white people that he sees as the master race, the people that should be preserved at the expense, at the expense of everyone else. In fact, he's calling people who are simply fleeing the warfare that imperialist conditions have forced upon them as the scum of the earth. Should tell you how overt his racism and his xenophobia is. We've got welfare cuts and the curtailment of freedom of speech. So before he was even elected, his forces, the police, which are heavily associated with the far right, were going into universities and removing anti-fascist and anti-Bolsonaro campaign leaflets and taking away information about fascism, about the history of the far right, and about of Nazis. And this is clearly to crush dissent, to crush anyone who opposes the far right, and obviously that's the justified position to have, to oppose the far right. That's what decent people do. However, he's a fascist, so he doesn't care about their freedom of speech. He doesn't care for freedom of speech. He wants speech to be suppressed in favor of his own power. Welfare cuts, the disabled, people on maternity leave, people who need additional help aren't going to get it because Bolsonaro needs to cut them to maximize profits, to ensure that the wealthy have as much wealth, as much capital as possible. And that's going to be catastrophic. We already see what the effects of right-wing austerity policies do in the West, where thousands die every year because people don't have the money because they've been stripped of it from the austerity policies. That's going to be happening more and more in Brazil thanks to this far right man, this monster that's going to be attacking every element of society. On the topic of workers, the right to strike, the right to form unions, the right to protest the conditions that capitalism imposes on us, this is under threat as well. Bolsonaro is a fascist. He doesn't care for the well-being of workers. He cares for his profits. And the worker that strikes and argues for their well-being is the worker that's eating into the capitalist profit. So the right to strike is going to be attacked as well. Left-wing ideas, left-wing movements, left-wing parties are going to be shut down and attacked by a fascist who does not want any left-wing presence in his country. He talks openly of killing and shooting and arresting left-wing people and of shutting down any political dissidents. This is a man who is openly fascist, openly genocidal, openly against any value of democracy and freedom. And this is sadly inevitable. This is inevitable to our society because we are a capitalist society. We are a society where capital, profits, money, wealth matters more than anything else. And obtaining said power, obtaining said class supremacy over that of everyone else matters more and is the direct meaning of the system over anything else. Fascism is born of capitalism. It is the natural conclusion of a system designed to exploit and manipulate and distort and steal the value of other people to yourself. Bolsonaro is simply one of many to be in favour of fascism, in favour of a system that uses bigotry, discrimination, ecological devastation, impediment of freedom, societal regression, all-round decay of any societal progress we've had in order to maintain capital, in order to maintain their power. Bolsonaro does not care, or does not even believe half the stuff he says. He knows full well that climate change is happening. He knows full well that men and women are the same. He knows full well that black people are not some inferior race. He knows full well that LGBTQ rights do not damage anything. Yet he chooses to persist and attack these people, these elements of our society, because he knows that attacking them and forcing them into worse conditions, ruining the ecology and environment of the world, helps capital, helps profits, helps his wealth and the wealth of all his capitalist friends. This is the natural conclusion of capitalism. And until we recognise that capitalism will always ruin our lives, ruin the lives of everyone on the planet, and is literally leading our planet into ecological devastation, we cannot overcome people like Bolsonaro. We cannot make progress. We cannot escape the clutches of fascism. My heart goes out to everyone in Brazil who is going to be, no doubt, terrorized by this horrible government. Be it people of color, like myself, LGBTQ people, women, the disabled, workers, anyone. Anyone and everyone who's going to be targeted by this regime, this dictatorship, this government which seeks to eliminate any fairness and any freedoms we once enjoyed. My heart goes out to all of them because it's going to be hard. And indeed, capitalist society is getting worse and worse because we have not addressed the cancer, the infection of society that is capitalism. Until we do, things are going to get worse. So, it's important we focus on eliminating this capitalist infection of our society and working towards a better world for all.